Hey folks, this is John Morris, and welcome to Awaken Nation with Brad Zollis.
A huge shift is taking place on planet Earth. People seem to be waking up. Tired of the way things used to be, they are creating something brand new and changing the world we live in. My name is Brad Zollis, and I get to sit down with the next generation of idea makers, the disruptors, and the game changers. Everyday people, just like you and me, from all over, who are doing amazing things. Welcome to Awakened Nation.
Hey folks, I have on a tremendous dude. I can't call him a dude. He's dressed up way too nice. I shall call him a gentleman, the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And he has been kind enough to join us on the show today, late at night, over there in jolly old England. John Morris, welcome to Awakened Nation, my friend.
Thank you very much for having me, Brad. I really appreciate it. Super excited to be here, and super excited that we got to connect and do this show as well.
Yeah, we have to give a big shout out to Tracy who connected us. She caught my episode with Marcus Ogden, so I'm very excited to have you on here. Uh, Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up. Uh, we're talking to a guy who went through hell and back and learned to be creative in the process. And I love your paintings, by the way. I've been doing some research on you,
Thank
but
you.
are you ready to go, my friend?
I'm absolutely ready to go.
Good, good. I'm going to read a little bit of your bio. John Morris was born on April 3rd, 1988, emerged as an artistic prodigy with an unbridled imagination early in life. Here, let me move this over real quick. Faced with challenges such as dyspraxia, dyslexia, amaurosis, did I say that correctly?
You did, yes.
Amaurosis and colitis, John turned adversity into opportunity. He was the only child in his family. John's vivid imagination became his steadfast companion. Rather than succumbing to the difficulties posed by his learning and physical differences, he harnessed those disabilities as catalysts for creativity and resilience. Through captivating paintings and engaging videos, John has become a beacon of inspiration, touching the lives of hundreds of thousands of fans on a weekly basis. In the realm of literature, he redefines the concept of the traditional heroes, crafting characters that resonate with all. Please welcome to Awakened Nation, Mr. John Morris.
That was fantastic, Brad. Well done. Because that's a lot of information to sort of regurgitate and to spew forth and everything. But you did a phenomenal job. So big props. Well done.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I spent about 35 years in the pharmaceutical industry, so they kind of send you off to, I'm joking, but they send you off to like a pharmacological college to pronounce those Latin words. So
Yeah.
I want to dig in a little bit because your story is fascinating as an artist, a provocateur who does videos and things like that. Uh, Most people that I've met, and we had Jeremy Schultz on the show, the Wandering Monk, he had to relearn how to communicate because he grew up with Tourette's syndrome. So he learned a pattern in the drumming. I was just curious, how did you learn to survive with dyslexia? Because these kinds of things, you don't learn like everybody else. You just have a different way that your brain works. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't mind sharing my age with folks. I'm going to be 36 in April, and the reason that I bring that up is because when I was growing up, there wasn't all these dyslexias and dyspraxias and all these other conditions that people, that are commonplace now. So you really had to navigate the world. And I still remember my science teacher saying to my parents on parents' night, John's a really nice guy, but he's never going to amount to very much, because I just couldn't grasp what it was that they were trying to teach and how they were trying to teach it. Little did I know that you are responsible for your own education. So if something isn't working one way, try it a different way. So when I went back and studied at college and things to get my English and maths, your basic grades, it was a teacher of mine that taught by humor, and it stuck with me. And I thought, gee, that's an interesting way of learning. And that was it. And how you navigate the world, how you understand the world, it's both your blessing and a curse, because you see things in ways that very few other people do. But at the same point, it can really alienate you from everyone else that's in quote unquote normal. So that it was a massive, massive learning curve that I didn't really, I suppose, in many ways, get to understand or diagnosed until I was actually up in Scotland in my 20s. So by that point, you've made sense of the world in one way, but then you've almost got to relearn everything all over again.
Yeah. Because you're really developing and working with how your brain works compared to everybody else. For me, all I can say, there's 10 learning styles, and they've discovered many more in this modern day and age, but I am always a visual learner. Like
Yes.
I can go to a movie and I can come back out and do all the voices and recite the lines on the first time I watch,
Mhm.
and my friends thought that was cool, but they also thought I was a weirdo. So you and I have a lot in common because I'm an only child as well. I'm an artist, designer. I was into Star Trek when it wasn't cool,
Yeah.
when you could get beat up for that. And so what was it like growing up? I mean, did kids pick on you, or were you just cool?
I don't know, whatever. It was only really when I was a youth minister, sort of in my mid to late 20s, that I was defined as cool. But no, I mean, when I was young, I spent a lot of time in my very early age, sort of up until about 8 or 9 years old, quite happy, easy to get along with, and everything else. But then, sort of 8 years old, I started to notice almost like I would I would just drift off. I would look up out the window and, see the beautiful Huddersfield, hills, and, and just all the colors that was there. And that really sort of stimulated my mind, because the classroom bored the pants off me. I mean, it really did. It was the
Yeah.
traditional way of learning. It was, just do your best in your examinations and all that kind of stuff. There was a little bit of bullying that went on towards the end of my primary school. There was a lot that went on towards the beginning of my secondary school life, because again, you've got this guy who's obviously very, very different, and he doesn't act like everybody else. He's into wrestling, he's into art, he's into, all of these different things. The way he talks is different, the way he behaves is different. And I became very socially awkward, and I would spend a lot of time in the library because I was just petrified of going outside into, the real world. Probably a trait that stayed with me for a long time, to be fair. But then, little by little, you start finding these pockets of other human beings who are the social outcasts as well.
Yeah.
And we ended up with probably about a group of 25 of us. And I really enjoyed that for sort of the last 3 years of my, high school life. But then there was also, really wanting attention. There was a lot of things that was going on that now I look back as a psychologist in training, that I look at and say, I can completely understand that and how that's factored into my life, and even to this day, for better or worse. But it was difficult, and still is in a lot of ways, to go into new environments where people all the time, they don't want to invest time into getting to know somebody else or their conditions or whatever. They just want to go like that.
Yeah. Well, I also think it brings up it's kind of like training for resilience,
Yes.
strength, standing on your own. Um, the idea of being an only child, if you look at the list of people who are raised as
Mhm.
only children, their success levels are much higher
Yeah.
than everybody else who was born into a much larger family. And I feel it was a gift because when I was a kid growing up, for probably the first 6 years of my life, yes, I went to school, but my parents were my confidants, my friends, my buddies. They didn't play with me. They didn't sit down on the floor and play games. My dad taught me how to throw a baseball because he was like, "All right, I got an hour. Let's show you how to play baseball." Because he owned his
Yeah.
own business. So I think and you can tell me I'm right or wrong,
Mhm.
we started out life not, catering to our peer group, which was a bunch of kids around us, but really our parents, which made us speak and act and think more like adults in the adult environment.
I would agree with that to a degree, although I would substitute parents for grandparents in my case, because, and it's no secret, it's been a big part of my story that my parents had their own share of issues. I mean, by the time I was 10 years old, I knew fear, like in ways that people would never even imagine, in every part of my body, every part of my being. I didn't know if there was going to be times where, we were going to be homeless, whether my dad was going to be there, whether he wasn't. There was a lot of stuff for a young guy to have to, sort of take on his shoulders. And that exactly as you phrased it was, I think what made me think more mature. Like I was 10 years old, but you talked to me as if I was 40. It was,
Yeah.
and that's never really changed. I've always got on better probably with older people and younger people than I have my own age group. Uh, I really found that a difficult thing. And that, yeah, I mean, that was a big thing, with my grandparents, having that, relationship with them. And it was a very mature thing,
Yeah.
rather than, just going out, getting stupid, sleeping around, which is stuff that the drinking, yes, but I was doing that by myself. I became very insular. I became very almost like a monastic life monk at 13, 14 years old. I was
Yeah.
very, very reclusive for a long time.
I was deathly shy as a kid, and my father broke me of that. He was the first generation born here from Hungary,
Mhm.
and he wouldn't let me come inside until I said hi to the neighbor kid, the new neighbor kid. And there was a thunderstorm brewing. I sat there for almost an hour. I mean, the lightning was about to strike and rain was about to come down. My father said hello, and then the other kid said hello, and I
Oh,
ran inside.
wow.
And I said to myself, the pain of sitting out there waiting to say hello was greater than just getting it over with.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I sat in my room, by myself, and I made a decision not to be so, shy.
Yeah.
And so now you see what I do. But
Well, that's one way of doing it for sure.
yeah, I mean, my dad was a hard knocks kind of guy. Um, he didn't apologize for much, and I definitely didn't wear a helmet or any pads when I rode
Sounds
bicycles.
similar. Sounds similar. Yes.
Yeah, but I had a good friend of mine, Dave Zierfoss. His parents had him when they were much older. So by the time he was in high school with me, his parents were elderly. They
Right.
were retired. And I
Okay.
think what happens is you're more concerned with upsetting your grandparents.
Hmm.
So you're reaching forward, whereas as a teenager, in most cases, you're like, I don't want to have anything to do with my parents. They're idiots, that kind of
Yeah.
mentality. And instead you're leaning in with your
Mhm.
grandparents. Do you think that's true?
I think it's true that the funny thing is, and I've heard this from a lot of parents, they will say that their kids, again, teenage years, they thought they were idiots, but they grew up and, you probably know what's coming. There's times that I still have conversations with my parents on a frequent basis where I'm like, what are you doing? We are so polar opposites, I mean, we really are. But I actually learned, and I learned this in business as well, how not to do business by watching certain people. And you learn a lot by just people watching. And analyzing what they do, why they do it, why they behave in that way. Like my dad had it in him, and he really wanted to be a great inventor, but he would always make excuses. So I went the opposite way, and it's like, okay, figure out what's already working and just build upon that. It's not difficult, essentially to make the wheel better.
Right.
Hence why we have tires on wheels now. But yeah, it was really it was interesting for sure. It's taken a long time to really, kind of factor out. But again, it was one of the best gifts that I had because I could
Yeah.
now shape my world in whatever way I wanted and genuinely believe that. That was a really cool thing.
It's kind of like you saw that your dad wasn't taking action and you became the opposite. You decided to
Yes.
become a man of action.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, quite
Or what do they
literally.
call that over in England?
I think it's pretty much the same as a man of action. Whether it's Scotland, Wales, Ireland, where I think it's universal. But
right.
it's very true. It was like my dad. Again, had it within him to do great stuff and to be great, but he just settled for mediocrity and
Yeah.
excuse after excuse after excuse. But I'm not in his shoes, and it's not my
Right.
life. So I just
So,
I release it.
so you're the William Wallace of your family, right?
You could say that. You could say that. Hopefully with a better ending. But
There you go.
yeah.
Oh man. This is powerful stuff that you're doing. Now, how can I say this? How, these formative years and you're moving forward, how did you start to discover that you're just turning this, you know, these cards that God gave you,
Yeah.
and you've turned them now into something creative, something to be a force to be reckoned with, and you're painting and you're drawing and you're doing all these cool things. When did you realize like this is your passion? This is what you're doing for the rest of your life?
I'm going to answer that question, but I'm going to change it slightly. So basically, I knew, without sounding, egotistical or really arrogant, but I knew I was destined for something more when I was 5 years old, because we would go to Catholic church, my gran and I would look around and I would see the way that people prayed, and they always bowed their head and pounded their chest and everything. And I'm looking up to this beautiful 50-foot, stained glass image of Jesus Christ. And I knew right there and then something was very, very different about how I saw the world compared to everyone else.
Yeah.
So when I was 13 years old, I started weightlifting. By the time I was 17 through 19, I was one of the top junior British bodybuilders that there was, which is super cool. That's not factoring in the fact that for maybe a year or two before that, I had been diagnosed with colitis. Again, something they didn't know what it was. When it was really bad with colitis, by the time I was 19, I was told, look, you need to stop doing this. And then it's like, well, what do you do next? So you start looking at artwork, you start looking at youth work, you start looking at other professions, you start looking, and then sort of, all the way through my 20s, you got to tour as a musician, you got to start doing artwork. I knew that I didn't just want a 9 to 5 job. And that isn't disrespectful to anybody who has a 9 to 5 job. It's just for me, that wasn't, that I just felt like, no, I want to be the person running the show rather than just sitting there living someone else's dream. I want to be the one that's doing it. And, you see Bob Ross, painting, and fell in love with Bob Ross and was just like, yep, let's try doing that. So I did that over and over and over again. I have a highly addictive personality. So whatever I put my attention into, it is going to succeed and drive forward in some ways, because literally you will never find anyone that's going to outwork me or that is this level of crazy about what he does. But when you start believing that, hey, this is something that you really can get into, and I was doing this, on a subconscious level without knowing, you're creating your own destiny here. You're walking that divine path. You now I know, after the spiritual transformation in 2021, all this stuff going on. It's like, wow, this is super cool. And in just the last couple of years in particular, it's just blown my mind what we've been able to do.
Wait a minute. You just said you had a spiritual awakening in 2021?
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that, because you and I have a lot in common, brother. I'm telling you. Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. Let's go for it. So I'd left youth ministry in 2016, and without going in a whole backstory, because we've covered it on other podcasts, the short version of it is I saw stuff in the churches and in ministry, not just in one, but in a lot of them around globally, quite honestly, that should never have been in there, should never have been happening, on and on and on. And it ended up being, you believe you're the one with the problem. And this goes back to the whole, how people see you, and people love to do this to cover their tracks. It's just like, it's far easier to blame John than it is to acknowledge that, we're the one with the problem. Right. So bottom line was, I had dealt with this and mental abuse and PTSD without even knowing it for probably close to about 4 or 5 years. I leave the church in 2016. And I mean, it is, everything's going to hell in a handbasket by the looks of it. Again, there was severe illness. I was verging on the, down the path of alcoholism. In-law trouble was, rife because we weren't going to church and they didn't want to listen to the reason why. There was a lot of things that were going on. People in the church would come up and say, hey, how are you getting on? How are you getting on? And when you tell them honestly, they would just get up and walk away. This literally happened. So, this goes on for a couple of years, and little by little, it gets a little bit better, but then something else would happen, a little better, something. And then eventually in 2021, we'd moved house in 2019. I'm sitting down in the downstairs office in 2021, and Wayne Dyer, for whatever reason, comes on YouTube, and it's his everyday wisdom. Now, bear in mind, this is a person, you probably wouldn't believe it, even if I said it, but with an ungodly level of anger, like the Incredible Hulk on steroids. It was not fun being me. It was not fun being around me at that point, because I didn't care. And Wayne Dyer's everyday wisdom comes on, and literally within 2 hours, all the anger, all the anxiety, all the frustration, all the bitterness, hate, rage, envy, whatever, had gone. I went and told my wife, and she was like, what the heck do you mean? That it's all gone. You can't just run into a kitchen and say, it's all gone, honey. And it was, it was, and that doesn't mean to say that everything's just been rosy and, la, 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 la. Right. But that's literally what happened. And that led into, we were filming a show today for YouTube, and it was exactly the same thing. All of a sudden, these doors started to spring wide open, working with Marcus, working with Laurie Bischoff, working with multimillionaires, all of this stuff started happening. And some of the biggest dreams of all that I would never have factored in started to, it was like, now is the right time.
Wow. Is anybody taking notes who's listening in on this show? Let go of that anger. Doors open.
I'm known for doing deep podcasts, apparently. So, yeah.
Evidently. I'm just imagining a Monty Python sketch where your neighbors are like, have you seen John lately? He's got a bit weird. That is incredible. That
isn't the half of it.
Yeah. That's incredible that happened. But what else? You said that isn't the half of it. What else did I'm sure people were like confused. But what else happened?
So literally, all of a sudden you realize that you can blame your family, you can blame the church, you can blame everyone under the planet, under the heavens, literally for every single thing on God's green earth. But the reality is, it doesn't help you in any way, shape, or form. They are doing what they know how to do, given the circumstances of their life. Here's the thing about it. Even if they're acting out, they're being rude, disrespectful, why then do you need to choose to get angry, to frustrate, to explode or whatever? Well, because you've been conditioned to do so. Somebody hits you, you hit them back. That is a preconceived condition that you have been raised with. And when I realized that, I was like, okay, my parents and in-laws and everybody else could be complete a-holes, but why then do I need to get myself all upset and angry and frustrated about it, which just takes years off of my life, literally. So when I figured that out, and I let all that stuff go, I then, again, I started studying psychology like a complete, again, lunatic. I studied three of the United States' most prestigious universities, MIT, Yale, and Stanford. Yeah. And I just went through all of these introduction courses online, and I was just like, brilliant, great, what's next? And I think in 1 year, I maybe racked up about 75 hours worth of online tuition through courses and everything else. And it was phenomenal. I was just absorbing all this stuff like a sponge. And then from there, I reached out to Laurie Bischoff, wife of Eric Bischoff, wrestling legend, and literally said, hey, I know we did a show together, maybe 2 years ago. I've got this idea in mind for teen life coaching. We didn't have a name for it then, but it was to help teenagers to understand what was going on, their minds and their body and soul and everything else, which is something that doesn't get taught in schools and education stuff. And she was like, I don't know what we're doing, but I'm in. Now, to have that level of somebody to do that is like, holy cow, wow. And then we, again, I'm doing, podcasts with former UFC, fighters, with wrestlers, with film stars, with actors. And I just did a whole, season of this stuff. Then I start working for the Los Angeles Tribune. Then you start going elsewhere, and you've got your book series, and it just literally ideas roll faster to me than I can get them out. And that's why both Tracy and Marcus, who are a part of our team, they're like, oh, Lord help us, he's got another idea. Because they know it's like, he's going to execute this, and it's like, it's going to be big. But yeah, it's like, yeah, which is super cool.
I wanted to touch base on this, you being a Catholic and all. I also grew up Catholic, but I believe one of the divine gifts that God gives us is the ability to create and then act on and put that creation into reality.
Yeah.
Nothing on earth has that ability except the human being. And I truly admire what you're doing. This is an incredible series. We have to know about this. Teen Life Coaching, is that what it's called?
Yeah, so that's part of the course. There is a brand new book series that I've been working on now, really for the last decade. That's all under wraps at the moment, but it is very, very close to being released, and it's going to be released with the second highest authority, which is super cool. And that's all I'll say about that. But yeah, there's six quite major things that are all just starting to skyrocket just now.
That's incredible. I really admire what you're doing because turning an idea into something that
Yeah.
is tangible and also can help the world, I think is the most powerful thing you can do. And
Yes.
today, let's be honest, we're living in a very different world than the one I grew up in.
Mhm.
And a lot of young people, they really don't know what is going
Yeah.
on or who to turn to, and they've been indoctrinated into some weird stuff,
Yes.
and they become an adult, and all of a sudden they don't know where to go and what to do, especially young men.
Yeah.
And I think this is why everybody's gathering around Jordan Peterson, because he
Mhm.
gives them rules for life that they never
Yeah.
got from their dad. And this is very powerful that you're kind of carrying on that legacy of giving back, teaching, and saying, hey, this is what I learned along the road,
Yeah.
and I didn't learn it perfectly, but I'm going to teach it to you in the best way I can. So, God bless you, man.
It,
That is
it's
awesome.
a phenomenal thing, and I'm a big supporter of Jordan Peterson. I am not a big supporter of Andrew Tate. We've actually got
Yeah,
a show coming out very soon, which is about the Andrew Tate idea,
yeah,
because he calls himself a trillionaire, and anyone that knows me knows that I always have the ability to coin a phrase, and one of the most popular is to study that which you desire to become. But another one which came out today was do the research.
yeah,
And when you actually look at a trillionaire, well, that leaves a lot of traces behind it. It's like black magic. It's also why Business Insiders haven't, had Andrew Tate on the cover. Because if this guy's a trillionaire, he's like, wow, he's doing something that the rest of us aren't doing. But when I started to really do the research on this, it struck me then that what Andrew Tate sells more than anything, and he does this phenomenally, is the idea of Andrew Tate, which is, again, you look at it and it's like, okay, the LGBTQI community is literally, it's all over the world. There's all sorts of confusion, like you said. Let's address the elephant in the room. There's all sorts of confusion that's going on. People don't know who they are. Male toxicity. There we go. It's easy for me to say. Again, if you're a man and you just state the facts now, you're toxic and you're just evil and everything else.
yeah,
Well, Andrew Tate sees this a couple of years ago because no one had heard of him before then, and all of a sudden he's saying this is what it means to be a man. The problem was he became a psychopathic lunatic with it. And
yeah,
if you've listened to any of his stuff recently, I mean, I just every time I see anything he puts up, and like report, block, get rid of, don't want to see it. There are 5 people that are part of a very elite club that I have, which goes under a very infamous name, shall we say. It's not particularly friendly or nice, but that's basically, they stay there. But Jordan Peterson, that's one of the people. Again, initially I was like, don't really like this guy, vibes and everything. But as I listened to what he said, I thought
yeah,
this is a guy who really has it, and he's got his own share of learning difficulties, whether it's Asperger's or whatever. There's definitely something that's there. But you listen to what he stands for, you listen to him as a person, and all of a sudden you can't help but gravitate towards him. So I
yeah,
kind of pick up where Wayne Dyer and Florence Scovel Shinn, and all these others left off, that have since passed away, and
yeah,
continue their work of the mind, body, and soul stuff, managing yourself. You are not who you think you are.
yeah.
And that's one of the biggest things I think for a lot of people when they have that, and you see the emotion break through on them, that there is something so much more to them, particularly with kids.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It really is amazing.
Yeah. There is this wonderful thing that you see, the difference between Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson, and
Yes.
that is Jordan Peterson is the elder statesman who's been through it all,
Yeah.
who's been roughed up, who's been knocked on his ass. And now he's bringing back that that knowledge, as he
Mhm.
says. He has that Canadian accent. But Jordan Peterson, all he is describing is the masculine values that I grew up with
Mhm.
before everything got,
Yeah.
changed, and true conservative values
Mhm.
is really what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Andrew Tate, on the other hand, comes across to me as a young person who has a lot of money. They
Yes.
brag, they talk big. And yeah, Andrew can back it up today. But is this the masculinity you want to look up to?
Exactly.
I also took jujitsu for 8 years,
Mhm.
fought in a ring. But I don't run around and say I'm the greatest, in the world. It's a small thing that I did,
Yeah.
very tiny part of my life. I like to cook for my girlfriend. I like to write. I've written several books. I like to, sit back and enjoy a good sunset or a good
Mhm.
sunrise. And I enjoy a good cigar and a glass of rum once in a while. But this new type of braggadocio, I guess they call it, type of male, I can't get into it.
No.
A lot of people make fun of it. They call it the guru syndrome, where someone has to be bigger than life. And I've seen this with people sometimes. They believe, and they've gotten this wrong, that the key to manifesting the life they want is to act the way they think a
Mhm.
billionaire acts. And so they begin to take on that role of, I'm hot stuff,
Yeah.
and they're not. And you want to talk about that a little bit, because that's what I'm seeing. This belief that if I act big, I'll become big.
So, I mean, there's a number of things there, to touch on. Firstly, the reason that a lot of teenagers are having the issues they're having now, and I always say, look at the independent variable. It's like what exists now that didn't before. So, when we were growing up at a variety of stages in history, there's a lot of stuff now that exists, particularly with social media, influencers, and everything else that didn't exist when we were growing up. I think it was certainly a less conditioned time, or maybe conditioning in a different way. Um, but with this whole idea of, yeah, and I never use the phrase fake it till you make it, but the power of manifestation. So I do believe that it is important to have a clear idea, or maybe your ideas become clear as you go along, and you almost step into that role. So if you're a best-selling author, for example, you don't start out that way, but you have a goal in mind that says, I'm going to be a best-selling author, and you work towards that. Even if you fall off the cliff a couple of times, you keep working towards it. You keep working, because if that's what you believe you're here to do, that makes sense. But equally, would I go out into, a sea of people and be like, I'm a trillionaire and I'm going to wipe you all out and I'm going to do all this and I'm going to, pardon the phrase, but bang every woman on the planet and they're going to stick with me? Well, Andrew, it's the moron that's deluded that believes that, because the lion of the top of the pride is only the lion at the top of the pride until the other lions see that he's either not pulling his weight, or he gets, flabby, or he's no longer useful, and then they tear him apart. That happens all the time in the animal kingdom. And do you think any one of those women are going to save you then? No. Why do you think they're with you now? Because you're their meal ticket, because they're deluded into the lifestyle, because a lot of women want to be Barbie, which is a dreadful film, by the way. Don't go and see it, folks. We've just watched it. It was one of the worst films that I've ever seen. Top
I
10
could
at
see
least.
that. I could see that without spending a dime.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, it was in my top three worst films. Its ending, I won't give it away, but it redeemed it a little bit, but it's still up there, top 6 or 7. But that's the whole thing. People want to have that lifestyle, but it's, the majority of people that you will have around you, they are just clinging to anything because they know their lives are absolute chaos. They know their lives are miserable, and that's all they've got is their looks, but the problem is they don't know, hey, you've got something in between your ears that can make you amazing. But more importantly, you're a divine being having a temporary human experience, and all you're focusing on right now is crap.
Yeah.
So, and that's one of the biggest problems of how people can be conditioned and how people can be manipulated. It's what we call dark psychology. When you know what people really aspire to, and what really gets people ticking, you can control them like that. And people have
Yeah.
said, "Oh, you can't do that. You can't do that." And I somewhat sit back and I start a conversation with people, and before
Yeah.
they know it, because they don't expect it, I've proven my point. So I think it's one of these things that hopefully will fizzle out. There's a lot that I hope will fizzle out, quite honestly, but and I've said this on other interviews, with regards to Jordan Peterson's daughter, Michaela, and Andrew Tate, if there is any truth to the fact that they were meant to have slept together and everything else, Andrew Tate, as far as I was concerned, have at least enough good graces to keep your gob shut about it. Because who needs to know? At the end of the day, he just come out of prison. Was it a press stunt? Possibly. I don't know. But he's not someone that I ever sit there and think, this is who I want my kids growing up. And the problem is that's now filtered into the schools, and teachers now are having an even worse time of it than ever before.
Yeah. Well, there seems to be this attraction to the bad boy, the arrogant jerk, the douchebag, as they say. And the good guy who pays the bills, raises the kids, is there for his wife, is put on the back burner now as the loser, the weirdo. What the hell is wrong with you? He's not sexy or whatever. And the dad bod has become the norm. But we are living in a very strange, topsy-turvy time, I have to admit. So,
yes.
By the way, how do we get a hold of you? Do you have a website, YouTube channel? Where do we go?
So the best place to get hold of me is at thejohnmorris.co.uk. You'll find out all information there about everything that we've got going on, and whether it's mind, body, and soul stuff, getting from where you are to where you want to be, books, creative business made simple. You'll find it all there, including the artwork as well. So absolutely.
Excellent. Now, I was very impressed. You talked about this earlier. You took classes at Yale, Harvard, MIT, Stanford, the Open University. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you? Can't you sit still? Clearly you can sit still. But this to me is, it's kind of like your brain works differently than most people. And once you turned it on, let go of anger, now you're wide open to learning. I hope people are taking notes on this. What it is, Buddha said, being angry with someone or something is like drinking poison and expecting them to die.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm paraphrasing. Sorry, Buddha. But you said something I
pretty much true.
Yeah. You said something I really enjoy, and I want to touch on this, but you said, seeking to be all things to all men. I study much, master none, always seeking to be a student of life and to help when and where I can, and whomever should cross my life's path. I love that. I think it's beautiful. And I think it ties into your projects like Whispers of the Highlands and Art from the Heart. Let's delve into this, because you're kind of like a Renaissance man. Let's put it that way.
That's a good way of describing it, for sure. Honestly, I mean, for me, I say there's two operations that are going on within me. One is in the physical, so where you're sitting there and you're physically studying and everything else. But the other one is where you're charged up spiritually. And I find when I am supremely charged up spiritually, it's like being plugged into the national grid. Like just before Christmas, I could have powered an entire nation with the amount of energy I was emitting. It was incredible. Or emitting, one or the other. I always get those things mixed up. But it was literally like, oh my goodness, all your pain in your knees go, your back, everything that's there when you are literally just spiritually charged. It is an incredible thing. So Art from the Heart, we're now approaching our 20th year, which is quite staggering. The fact I've been doing this for so long, custom paintings around the world, people's pets, portraits, landscapes, seascapes, all across the United States, all across Canada, Europe, Australia, Britain. And that's a lot of that's down to genuinely being able to build relationships with people, knowing how to talk to people, knowing how to hold conversation, but also genuinely caring about people. And that's been the same thing with whatever project that I've taken on, such as Whispers of the Highlands, which is sort of the predecessor to the new book series. I was like, yeah, this would be really cool if we did a mystery thriller podcast as well. Because I start doing all these things and I'm like, it's when you realize you actually can do this rather than, well, you might be able to do it, but it'll look kind of, crappy or whatever, or it'll sound really crappy. But then when you start narrating, you start talking, you start doing videos and people are like, wow, I really enjoy this. I clearly know how to get attention, and that's part of the other reason as well, because everybody nowadays that goes out on stage is dressed in a suit or a nice dress. whatever you know want to make of that, that's fine. But how many of these people can you genuinely remember either what they said, what they did? As soon as I step out there, as soon as I do a video, it's like, oh, this guy's different. And that's one of the things, because everybody's competing for attention now. But if you know how to do that, and you also know that he's not only dressed like this and the background that looks kind of weird and quirky, but the fact that he's insanely intelligent and he really can back up all these things, plus he just happens to be nice, you know, that's for whatever reason a very attractive quality to people. So it's been a super interesting journey, and it's crazy that it's been 2 decades of my life doing this.
All from somebody who had no confidence as a kid.
There
Look
you
where
go.
you're at today. I'm just thinking that somebody you did a portrait of their dog down in Australia is like, "Yeah, crikey, John did a fabulous job. Yeah, he painted my dingo. It's so lifelike. It was crazy." That's incredible. Thank you so much, John, for being on Awakened Nation. I'm not letting you go yet, but I find this conversation fascinating simply because, artists make the world go around.
Mhm.
And we are in a very strange time right now where someone like you, a man of substance, gets pushed to the back burner, but you've managed to make sure that you are an influencer in your own circle. Because we all know the Instagram influencers, who show off their body parts, and
Yes.
it's like, look at me, I'm dancing. First time I looked at some of this stuff, I go, why are people dancing? This makes and getting
Yeah.
attention for dancing. Um, I believe it was Aldous Huxley who said we will entertain ourselves to death. And that's exactly, people ask who will win in the final years. Will it be George Orwell's ideology or will it be Aldous Huxley's ideology? And it seems that they're both winning. It's neck and neck right now, because Aldous Huxley believed they won't have to ban books. They'll
Yeah.
just bombard us with so much information
Mhm.
and entertainment that's the equivalent of nachos with cheese sauce that we won't even know the truth is. We won't be
Yeah.
able to find it. We won't
Yeah.
be able to see it. Um, it's
Let's just touch on that for a second, because our
sure.
new show, Creative Business Made Simple, this is one that literally strips back everything. So there's no green screen, there are studio lights, but it's literally done in various locations in my house or around Scotland or wherever. And the reason that we did this was because there is so much nonsense out there. Out of 100% of people that are claiming to be millionaires, only 5% of them online are actually telling the truth. And that was information, that was research that's been done, not just by myself, but Alex Hamonzi as well, and a lot of others. So when you strip that back, and there's one episode where I start in a messy kitchen, and I'm like, in this world of social media where everything is perfect and we have this sort of, we want to present this world. Why am I standing in a messy kitchen? Well, simple, because it's real, because we're building trust. Again, when everybody's going that way, I'm usually going that way, because you don't want to follow the crowds in
Yeah.
every single, sort of circumstance of life. But doing that and having that openness, that really builds trust with people. But like you say, people now are so bombarded by information. Now you got to factor in, what is true and what isn't. And they've got to filter through that. And if you know nothing about the world, such as children, then you're just relying on the people that are feeding you this information to actually tell the truth. That's something now we're taking, again, the bull by the horns and saying, look, I wasn't, always great at business. Not to say that I wasn't making sales business to customer, but we weren't making the hundreds of millions of dollars and all that kind of stuff. And that's when you say, but this started to happen from 2021 and so on and so on and so on. So I think that's one of the biggest things now, is to find the right people, and they will come. They always come when, I suppose, when again, like they say, when the student is ready, the teachers appear. And it's a very true thing.
That's phenomenal that you're doing that, because honesty and authenticity, I think, is where we can begin
Yes.
with everything. Because I'm a creative director and a graphic designer, and sometimes I have to tell people stop charging
Mhm.
$50 for a logo.
Yeah.
It's just you're never going to buy a house if that's how you do it. You're never
Yeah.
going to be successful if you put yourself in the, if I do it cheaper than everybody else, I'll have lots of work.
Yeah.
Stop.
But the problem is, it's like, would you rather have, 250 orders that pay you $50 a pop, or would you rather have, five orders that paid you 10 grand each,
Yeah.
and recurring customers?
And
I know
that's
which
my
I'd prefer,
thinking.
especially at this point in my life.
Yes, yes. So I want to talk about your artwork. I love your artwork, and it's uh, let's talk about that. You started to get into Bob Ross. You got to reach out to Jen DeVore Richter.
Okay.
She became mildly obsessed with Bob Ross. Even visited his house or his estate, and started taking these classes in his techniques. And she's really getting good. But she used to be an executive over at NASA, and
Oh,
she used to
wow.
work with Buzz Aldrin. So I'll introduce you because
Super.
you two are
Please
Bob
do.
Ross fans. So let's talk about your paintings.
Yeah, absolutely. So, 17 years old, and you'll find, folks, that a lot of my timelines cross over. There's a lot of stuff that usually happens all at once. So 17 years old, I can't remember if I was out of work or if I was on a lunch break, but I was sitting there just channel surfing, and yeah, Bob Ross's Joy of Painting came on TV. This really wacky guy, the whitest guy
Yeah.
in the world with an afro. And he's painting and he's doing such an amazing thing. And there was such a connection there. And I was just enamored. And I was like, oh, okay, let's have a go and try this. So I had these really cheap poster paints that I think we'd had since I was a child, bit of paper that was there, and I start painting a house, and I would step back and I'd be like, oh wow, that actually looks like what I'm trying to do in things. So then it develops, and again, bear in mind the whole thing about obsessive, it's like obsessive compulsive on steroids. Start painting, start going, all out, and start buying materials, start, everything that's there. And it got better and better and better as time went on. And I'd splattered my parents' attic in all sorts of turpentine and color and whatnot. And that was really a big part of my life. And when I came back from the United States in 20, I think it was 2011, 2012, because I'd gone out there, the very first business tour I ever did. And it was, taking my art out there, taking my illustrations out there, and I'd, was being successful at it and enjoying a lot of success. And came back, and my former housemate had basically, we were sharing a house at that time, and basically he just decided, hey, I want my house back, and that's it. And he put me in a one-bedroom, I call it the cell. I mean, it was hell on earth, where he put me in one of the most dangerous locations in the town. And you're having to factor and understand all of this. And there was a period where just it was severe depression, not understanding what to do. How do I recover from this? Can I recover from this?
Right.
And yeah, literally, it was, you need to do something. So pull up your bootstraps, get your paints out and start making some sales with your paintings. And that's when I started learning to paint pets. A couple of months later, started to paint, portraits, and found, yeah, I could actually do this. And that was one of the big things. I think maybe 8 months later, I ended up leaving the cell, moving into my own apartment. My wife and I, we just got together. There was a lot of things that were happening all at once, but people around the world started loving it. And, there's been a number of rebuilds over the years. And then when I finished with youth work, I kind of sat there. I was like, well, what do you do now? So I know, let's go build an art school, and went ahead and did that. Became one of the top art schools in South Asia. We had 45 students that were coming through for our tiny little art school every single week. It was an incredible thing, and I did that until we eventually moved state, as you would say, town over here. And I just realized that I needed some time to heal, obviously, as we've talked about. And ultimately, it was a really awesome experience, and life has developed a lot more now. It's changed a lot more now, to where I'm really niching down just on mountains and originals and prints and all the other stuff that goes with it. I still do the pets, but I know now that I can't scale that as much as what I would have enjoyed, at a previous time. So now I'm more focused on my books than ever before and expressing myself in a different way through there. It's like the self-help book for the person that would never pick a self-help book up. So yeah, it's been a blast.
Self-help books for the people who hate self-help.
Basically, it's almost like you've got to hide the lessons within the novel, you know.
Yeah, I agree. Wow. John, thank you so much for being on Awakened Nation. You blew my mind. How do we get a hold of you again? We go to thejohnmorris dot,
Co.uk.
what is it, Coodle?
Co.uk. thejohnmorris.co.uk.
Co.uk. Got
Yeah.
it. Man, this is going to be fun when this airs live. So I'm not letting you go yet. It looks like you're somewhere at Hogwarts in the background. But I asked 3 questions of my guests so that everybody gets to know you better. And so I guess the first question I would like to pose to you is, if there was a movie made about your life, who would play you?
I would, well, it's funny you say that because that may be a very real potential before all is said and done. And honestly, I would like knowing the story. I would like the opportunity to at least read for me. I think that'd be pretty cool. Failing that, I think I'd want someone like a Robert Downey Jr. or Benedict Cumberbatch,
There you
to
go.
do that. Yeah, I think that'd be cool. Or Tom Cruise, but you'd have to put him on stilts, So
Yes.
you know.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I've always thought Matt Damon could play me.
Yeah, that could be a fun one.
Yeah, wow, that's funny. Let me ask you this. What is your favorite memory?
The last one that I can remember, usually. Yeah, I mean, I suppose in many ways, it's certain people that have come into my life, whether or not it be at the MMA Academy, whether or not it be, working at various churches that actually weren't, superficial, that actually had a lot of substances to them. The first night I met my wife, yeah, I would say that there's a lot certainly that's there. And it can even be the memories that I fabricated myself through the writing of novels. There's some phenomenal ones there, and I think people oftentimes don't realize how powerful the imagination is, and how much it actually can free you if you allow it to do so, more than
Yeah,
anything.
powerful. And my third and final question is this. Um, what is your greatest hope?
I think for me, my greatest hope is to live long enough to write the entire Art Through the Ages series and see it all come to fruition. I think that's the biggest thing for me at this point. But aside from that, I'm genuinely in a place where I don't really hold on to very much. I allow everything to flow as much as possible, and ultimately hope that I did a phenomenal job for me, and that I enjoy what I'm doing, because if I'm enjoying it, usually other people are enjoying it as well.
Phenomenal. I just thought of something. I really would like to play one of your videos, like a little
Yeah,
short
absolutely.
thing. So I'm just going to set it up right here. Folks, I want you to watch one of John Morrison's, I want you to watch one of John's videos, and we're going to do that right now. So you get to see John Morris in action. Roll the tape. Then we'll come back. I was like, I love what you're doing, man. I really do. It's phenomenal work. Real quick, I think Liam Neeson could play you. I have
That'd
a
be
particular
super
set
cool.
of skills.
Yeah, I mean, the crazy thing is, I always think of Liam Neeson as Aslan, and when they were talking about rebooting and with a whole new cast and things, I was like, you've got to have Liam Neeson as
Yeah,
Aslan and everything. But
he's
you know,
tall. I lived
yes,
in New York
yes,
I lived in New York for 35 years, and he walked by one day and I'm just like, holy crap. He's like, I'm 5'8". He's like, I mean, he towers over me. No wonder they chose him for Rob Roy. But yeah, it would be funny having
it's
you as
one
a
of the crazy things, like when we did wrestling conventions and things, there are some that you think, man, you should be much taller than, because I'm 6'1". I'm not,
yeah,
in the United States, I'm a midget.
yeah,
Over here and in Korea, I'm massive.
Yeah.
But there's others that are, walk past and you think, wow, you're not as tall as what I thought you were.
Yeah. TV creates quite the illusion.
Yes.
It is funny. And here's the funniest part. I've met some really, really tall people,
Mhm.
and on television, they look like they're my size. And I'm
Yes.
like, oh,
Yeah.
that's camera angles right there. But I just want to hear Liam Neeson go, I have a particular set of skills. I can paint your dog or I can paint your horse. I can't do both, something like that.
That'd be phenomenal. That would be phenomenal. Really would.
Yeah, and then you could fight your way out of the big scene at the end,
Yeah.
So, John Morris, thank you for being on Awakened Nation, my friend. It has been an honor and a privilege. Thank you.
It has been amazing. Thank you so much for having me, and I hope we get to do this again somewhere down the road.
Oh, we will, my friend. Thank you. Hey, everybody, tune in next week here on Awakened Nation, and till I see you again, bye-bye for now.
Thank you so much for being a big part of the Awakened Nation movement. This is how you can help me and our extraordinary guests. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And let's grow this movement by word of mouth. Our success will be because of you. Thank you, and see you next week.